That's a weird-looking enemy.
Greetings, comrades. This is Emmett Watkins Jr., also known as EJ Spun61 on this here old internet, and I'm back with another hip-hop album review. This time, we're doing Revival by Eminem. Now, pardon me if I sound a little bit depressed during this review. It's for reasons you'll find out during the review. Or if you haven't seen the reviews from other outlets already, you probably already know, but let's get into it. So first off, history with Eminem. Me personally, Eminem has been my favorite rapper for a long time. It's really him that got me. I've been a fan of hip-hop music for most of my life, if not all of my life. And Eminem is really the first hip-hop artist that I listened to that got me into even thinking and considering lyrics. I would always listen to. I grew up in Georgia all my life, so I'm really familiar with that Southern hip hop, all that type of stuff. You know, the field mob type stuff, the ludicrous type stuff, things like that is what I've always listened to. And Eminem's the first artist that I listened to where I was actually caught up in all the wordplay he was using. That's the thing that always impressed me with Eminem. I had always listened to him for that aspect, but as he's gone on in his career, I've still loved his lyrical wordplay. He's always been the king of that. There's really no one I know that can touch him in just the way he plays with words. No one can really accomplish that in the same way he does. But he has kind of changed and reinvented himself in every album in the last couple years. As most of you know, he had a drug problem earlier on in his career. So during pretty much up to after Eminem's show Encore is really at the height of his drug use. And then you had Relapse, where he was like trying to get over his drug addiction. And then Recovery, ever since Recovery, he's pretty much been all the way off drugs. And I don't want to correlate his musical quality to his drug use, but it does seem that ever since he has kicked the drug habit, he's been floating around trying to figure out where he should go musically. I think he was resting on his laurels for a long time in his career, and not in a bad way. Just since Dre is the one that helped him get to the place, to the success where he is. He worked a lot with Dr. Dre. He worked a lot with Aftermath in general, and just was very closely knit with them. And now he is definitely trying to experiment a little bit more. He's definitely trying to reach out to other artists a little bit more. But I question if that is good, because in this album here, Revival, it is definitely a mixed bag. Now you're talking to someone who, even though a lot of people disliked it, I really enjoyed Marshall Mathers LP2. I thought even though those beats were unconventional hip-hop beats, I will admit, for the most part, I really did enjoy. He rode the beat very well. And they were also just good. They were good beats for rapping. I felt like, even though they weren't the typical hip hop beats with the typical snares and the typical hardcore drums, they definitely got you amped. And his lyrics are definitely those that get you amped. In Revival here, it's a whole nother story. We're gonna go track by track, and I'll break down what I feel about every one of them. Starting with the lead track, also the first single from the album, Walk on Water, featuring Beyonce. Now, Walk on Water is, now from a lyrical standpoint, I appreciate Eminem opening up about his insecurities, opening up about the fact that he does see the criticism that he gets, and that he knows that, you know, people look at him in a certain way. They think he can do no wrong. They think he's immune to all criticism. But not only does he see the constant criticism he does get, especially nowadays in this current musical climate, but it takes a toll on his self-confidence and such. And I thought that was really impressive. May not be the word, even though I do feel like it's impressive. I think it's just more admirable that someone in his stature, someone that is held up to such a high regard in rap, is, you know, open like that. And I was really shocked to see Beyonce on here. Like when the song was first announced, before the album was even announced, I was surprised to see her on here. That is like the last person I'd assume Eminem would have worked with. Not because there's any animosity there. It's just Beyonce's fan base and Eminem's fan base, I just think of as two completely different types of people. The fact that they've been blended together a little bit on this track just really impressed me. But as far as the instrumental on this track, it's very understated. It's just straight pianos, not much of a drums, not much drums here at all. There's not much here in the track from an instrumental standpoint to latch onto. It's really trying to make you focus on Eminem's words, which I've already said are salient words, and I appreciate him saying it. But as far as before the album even came out, this track got me very excited. I was excited for a more introspective Eminem, for someone who has noticed his career over the years and is now going to adapt along with the times, because even in that song he does establish, you know, the changing tides a little bit. And I was hopeful and expectant that because this lead single was about him talking about all of his flaws over the years, that it would lead to an album that was more reactionary rather than more of the same. And that is the downfall of this album, as you'll find out very soon. The second track, Believe, another kind of understated instrumental, this one by Eminem himself actually. The instrumental on here is a little bit more appropriate, I feel like, for Eminem's rapping style. Eminem is definitely a master wordsmith, and the soft pianos and very faint like hi-hats in the background, I feel like it made more sense as a rap track here, and it definitely made more sense for a rapper to be on it. Believe is a good track. What he's talking about lyrically, he had a couple of good punchlines, you know, being broke, support, excuse, and things like that. And talking about just his rise and how he had to build up self-confidence, and he had to believe in himself. And he's, you know, asking the fans to believe in him as well, kind of in a similar fashion to Kendrick Lamar's Mortal Man at the end of To Pimp a Butterfly. You know, if shit hits the fan, are you still a fan? Except in Kendrick's case, he's more talking about, you know, I'm going to be saying all this woke shit, and if conspiracies happen against me, you have to believe me if you're really a fan. Here, it's more just saying that Eminem's been doubted, Eminem's been criticized to hell and high heaven. Are the real fans still there for him even after all the criticism has come his way? So, I believe is a good track. Definitely one of the stronger tracks on the album for me. And that leads on to the next song, Chloroseptic, featuring Fresher, who some of you might know off of his song Wait a Minute. Overall, I thought this song was pretty good. I like this is one of the songs where Eminem did show a little bit of that promise to be a little bit more up with the times. Some of the lines in this song have the flow that you'd hear on like a Migos song or something like that. And it's very interesting to hear Eminem use a flow like this, because you just don't expect it from him. He still stays intricate with the wordplay, and he doesn't dumb down his lyrics much at all. But it's just really interesting to see him use that type of flow here. The instrumental is very... it feels understated, but there's actually a lot going on in the instrumental. It has like a... I don't know, like what I imagine the sound of flipping the switch on like a Frankenstein's monster would be. Is very like electric, wavy type beat, and then there's some like Stranger Things-esque synth going on here too, and then you have like the organs going on in the background as well. There's quite a bit going on. It doesn't sound like it's a cluttered mess of an instrumental, but there are some times where they mess with effects to punctuate some of Eminem's lines, and that can sometimes be a little bit messy. But overall, this is another one of the stronger songs on the album for me. I've listened to this a lot, and then Fresher actually doesn't have a verse. He just does the chorus here, and that chorus is definitely very catchy. I find myself singing it to myself every now and then, now that I've been listening to the album. So Chloroseptic, definitely one of the stronger tracks. It has like a trap vibe to me as well. I wouldn't be surprised if this was used as a single. I could see this on, you know, a hip-hop and R&B station, rather than a lot of Eminem songs getting played on the pop stations. This is one that I could see, you know, alongside all the other trap tunes of today. But it's definitely a pretty good song. I enjoy it, and I like the song. And that sends us on to the fourth track, Untouchable. Untouchable is a difficult song for me. And it encapsulates some of the problems I have with the album in general. Now, first off, just from a lyrical standpoint, the song starts off with Eminem rapping from a white person's perspective, and then not even halfway through, about 40% into the song, he switches over and he starts talking from a black man's perspective. And the beat changes along with it, with the first half being more of a rock and roll inspired rap instrumental, and then the second half being more of a straight up like boom bap hip hop beat that you're more accustomed to. Um, I like I like the concept of the track, with him talking about, talking from not even just a white person's perspective, but just a white police officer specifically, at least in the first couple bars. I like that he, an artist who really didn't need to talk about, things like police brutality and these racial tensions that are going on right now. He really didn't need to say it, especially considering the primary audience for Eminem is, pop fans generally. He really didn't need to say anything, but I appreciate him saying something on here. And what he does rap about are very salient points. Now he does characterize the white side as a bit racist in an over the top manner, but I don't feel like it did too much damage. I mean, we know there are non-racist white people. I mean, the fact that he's making this song kind of shows that, so I don't think he needed to say it on the track straight up. And then the second half, where he's talking from a black man's perspective, I thought that was very great too. Lots of really great wordplay on this track, especially in the second half when he's talking about the black plight and just issues in inner cities and whatnot. I thought it was great from a lyrical perspective, just all around. The problem that many people have had, not just me, is that while I love what he's saying on the track, is how he said it that throws me off. With that heavy inspired like rock and roll tune, and first half of the track, that instrumental almost reminds me of Berserk, if you remember that from his last album, Marshall Mathers LP 2. It's definitely in your face and just a little bit corny or tongue-in-cheek, and considering the subject matter this song is about, that just clashes wholeheartedly with the message. And the optimist in me wants to say that he has this more over-the-top rock and roll kind of poppy instrumental to go with the message, just so he can feed this message into his his white side, his white fan base that are more listening to the type who listen to Kid Rock and Eminem. I think he wants to feed this message to them, so he'll slip it in under the guise of, oh, look at this hard rock and roll track that you're gonna love and you're gonna play out loud. And I do think that's an effective way of doing it, possibly. But for the rest of us who know these injustices, who are already aware of these things, it just turns us off. And especially for people who, Eminem's already held in such high regard in hip hop circles, for the hip hop fans, that instrumental is just a really, really, really big turnoff, and it's just annoying. So Untouchable, over lyrically, great track. Instrumentally, it's not a mess. I can't say it's produced poorly. I just don't like the direction it was taken when it comes to production. At least not in the first half. I enjoy the concept of the song. I just wish the instrumental was something a little bit more to my liking, because while I do like that big boom, big bombastic rock and roll type of instrumental, it's troublesome when you're trying to talk about something serious like racial tensions and whatnot. So that's a song. The next song is River featuring Ed Sheeran. Now, I don't hate Ed Sheeran at all. I just don't have a problem with him. I just don't listen to the guy really. So Ed Sheeran's addition here, I didn't have an opinion on it really. He sounds nice on the track. I feel like it was more of, besides Ed Sheeran already being an Eminem fan, and he's said before that Eminem has saved his life in certain instances, I can understand how this collaboration would happen. And this is definitely going to be the song, because they released this song as a single the day that the album dropped, so I can understand that this song is probably going to be the most successful on there. If you compare YouTube views, Untouchable, the audio only version on YouTube, has gotten 10 million views in a week, while River got 10 million views in 2 days. So it's definitely going to shoot up there, and it's going to be the lead single on this album most likely. But as far as what I thought about it sonically, It definitely gave me remnants of I Love the Way You Lie, the Rihanna song from Recovery. It's definitely it's meant for a pop station, and Eminem's definitely he has some clever bars here. He does clever things with words as always. But this song, in context with the whole with all the other songs on the album, it definitely feels out of place. Not saying the song's bad, it just feels that like River seems like it's being rapped from the perspective of some random character that Eminem created and a whole bunch of random characters Eminem created, rather than it being about him or the world as a whole. Like in all these songs, he's either talking about his skill as a rapper or his own personal, issues and problems, or he's talking from a very, very, very general perspective that you could apply to just about anybody in the country. In River, it seems like he's rapping from one person's soul story that isn't him nor Ed Sheeran. So I just don't. It just didn't fit with the rest of the album in that way. Sonically, it's a nice guitar song, or it has like a nice guitar instrumental underneath the rap, underneath the words, and I think it's fine. It's not offensive. It's not bad by any means. It's just, it's more of a pop song as far as I'm concerned. While Eminem does come lyrically on this track, and he does some great storytelling bars here as well, it's just not impressive to me personally. It's impressive, but just the song overall is just not something. It's not something I turn off because I enjoy it when it's on, but it's never something I crave. It's never something I'm gonna go to track 5 real quick. It's just not that type of song. Remind Me intro, we're just gonna skip that because that's just leading into the next song, which is full on Remind Me. Remind Me. Just looking at the track listing here, when I first saw the track listing, I was very excited for Remind Me because it seemed like, since it had an intro and everything, it seemed like it was going to be a really big, bombastic, serious song. Something more akin to Cleaning Out My Closet from the Eminem show. It seemed like it was going to be a serious track, something big, something grand, or something like that. And all it is just another heavy rock and roll sample song in which Eminem is just talking about partying and women and stuff, which is fine. All rappers talk about partying and women, especially nowadays. But he uses the instrumental from I Love Rock and Roll. That's the instrumental he uses on here, and I gotta say, man, it's grating. It really is grating. He rides the beat very, very well. He rides the beat in almost all these songs on the album well, but it's just not a beat that I craved. It's not something I was asking for. Not something, in retrospect, I do expect it, but it's not something I came in thinking I'd hear. So Remind Me is just like, it's a lot of like cornier lines in this track as well. Him talking about, we all know fake tits are better than real ones, and it's just not. It matches with the rest of the album because there are other, heavily rock and roll inspired instrumentals on the album. But it's just like, it feels so old school in a way that I don't enjoy. Like, everyone wants the old Eminem. But this sounds like, once again, I've already mentioned Berserk from the last album. This feels like it's just another Berserk song. And I skip Berserk almost every time I listen to Marshall Mathers LP2. So, Remind Me, not the best track in the world. Once again, what I said for River is I don't skip it when it's on. For Remind Me, I've skipped it a couple times already, and we're not even a week out from the album's release. Yeah, man, Remind Me, not the best track on here. Not a poorly made track. It's just not what I want. It's just not what I want at all. Then we go on to the interlude for the 8th track, which is Revival. Even though this interlude shares the title of the album, it's very, very unimportant. I'm not sure who does the vocals on this, but it's just someone singing, this is our revival. There's nothing of substance in here. There's not even any rap of any type on this track. And it's nothing but like a minute long, so it's nothing to worry about. But yeah, that interlude is just, I don't know why you would name it after the album when it is so inconsequential. I just don't understand why it's there at all, to be completely honest with you. But, after a track like, especially after a track like Remind Me, where you're trying to have this soft, like, singy thing, and you just had that big bombastic, like, basically rock and roll song right before it, it just clashes a little bit to me. But I'll leave it there because it's less than a minute long and it's not offensive. Speaking of offensive, Like Home is probably really offensive to our president. This is, of course, a song that is featuring Alicia Keys. And it definitely has that vibe of like Empire State of Mind. And when I say that, I'm mainly meaning Alicia Keys' role in this. When I saw this track listing, I did have a feeling that Alicia Keys was going to be on here performing a role not like Beyonce in Walk in Water, where Beyonce was more of just a sultry voice to drag you along the more softer, intimate tones of that song. Like Home is more of a bombastic track, and Alicia Keys is here to kind of be a rallying cry type of voice. It is definitely it definitely gives me vibes of Empire State of Mind, or even It's On Again, if you remember from the Amazing Spider-Man 2 soundtrack, that song featuring Kendrick Lamar. It definitely gives me like big bombastic vibes, and Eminem also in this track goes in on Donald Trump more than he ever has before, even more so than he did in the freestyle. Like Home is definitely, it's one of my favorite tracks on the album, one of the stronger tracks. I will say at the end they have a solo from Alicia Keys, and it's not that Alicia Keys did not sing very well here. It is just they just didn't really give her much to say. She just says like home a whole bunch of times at the end of the song, and you kind of just feel like this should be over. But at the same time, when I think about it, this is the type of sound that would just resonate very, very, very well if it was performed. If I saw that song performed live, it would hit so much harder, and it would just be a better song if it was performed live. But in this recorded version, it seems like there's a lot of filler by Alicia Keys at the end there. But Eminem has some great lines. He has an extended metaphor in which he talks about how Donald Trump ate off the plate off Nazis, and so basically you ate off Hitler. Very clever wordplay in here in both verses that he delivers. Some of the most clever wordplay in the whole album on this one. So Like Home, definitely a highlight of mine. And I do appreciate the fact that he's connecting it back to, even though Donald Trump is our president, we won't let him define what the country is, and even though the Stars and Stripes have been tarnished, we can still come back and redefine what the country is about. A message I really appreciated. This is one of my favorite tracks for so many reasons that I've said, so definitely a good track. Then we move on to Bad Husband, featuring ex-ambassadors. Bad Husband is effectively, if you remember from his last album, Marshall Mathers LP 2, he had a song called Headlights in which he apologized to his mom for all of the mean, derogatory things he said to her and about her in his music up to that point. So Bad Husband here is effectively doing the same thing for Kim. You guys, if you don't know, Kim is Eminem's longtime girlfriend and now ex-wife. They've had many back and forths, and Eminem has rapped about it in many a track, especially on Encore, which I re-listened to recently. So Bad Husband is basically going through their relationship and how bad it was at the start, and how they've gone through so many fights, so many battles, and this song is basically giving closure to Kim and just giving closure to that entire public fiasco that was their relationship for so long. I appreciate what he's saying lyrically, and the message here is very sweet and very, well, it doesn't even come off as sweet. It just comes off as, I have to close this chapter of my life if I'm going to continue with my life. So I appreciate that. This is another good aspect of the album, similar to Walk on Water, where he's opening himself up a little bit, kind of showing some more raw emotion. I appreciate that. The problem with the track is the instrumental is just not, it doesn't feel like it matches the subject matter he's talking about. He's talking about this very intimate relationship that he shared, and how the falling out happened, and how there's closure behind it. But the instrumental is trying so hard to be very bombastic, and very, not bombastic, but it's definitely trying to be grand. And I don't feel that this needs a grand instrumental. This is really personal subject matter, and you're trying to make it sound like the biggest stadium hit of all time. And Ex-Ambassadors on here is just trying to make it sound like, it's just trying to bring it over the top into that grander scale. And I just don't think this instrumental matches that grander, or matches the more intimate tone of the lyrics. And the instrumental, it just sounds off to me. So Bad Husband overall, it's a song that I enjoy the subject matter. I'm really glad he came with that type of subject matter. I appreciate him, making up for his past sins. But that instrumental just rubs me the wrong way, and you might be able to see a pattern here with the instrumentals just turning me off in a lot of these situations. But we'll continue on. Bad Husband, decent track, but kind of a tale of two cities on that track. That leads us on to Tragic Endings. This is another song with another pop feature, Skylar Grey being up this time. Now, Tragic Endings, I enjoy this track, I think. This is another one where the instrumental actually got me hype a little bit, and I thought the instrumental was going to be pretty great. But turns out this song, I'll say it like this. With all the other pop features that have disappointed me on this album, some of which we'll get into after I talk about Tragic Endings, I thought Tragic Endings should on paper be another song that turns me off, but when I think about it, Tragic Endings is not that bad to me. Skylar Grey sings fine on here. She adds what you need to the track for it to sound a little bit more mainstream. And I definitely enjoy her vocals on this. Eminem comes with he's less trying to impress you with wordplay on this track. He's more just talking about, tragic endings, about, the push and pull of some relationship. It might be his, it might not be. This is another case, and just similar to Untouchable, where he's just talking in general, and you could apply it to, any couple USA. Tragic Endings actually reminds me a lot of something like 25 to Life off of Recovery. It's definitely, his flow is definitely there. He's not trying to impress with wordplay too much. It's a solid track. It's not really problems with it. On paper, I should dislike it, but when I think about the track now, I don't dislike it. So, Tragic Endings, a decent track. Not my favorite track on here by any means, but decent track. And then that goes on to Framed. Framed is a weird track. It's one of my favorite tracks on the album, we'll say that right now, but this is definitely the type of Eminem that when people say, I want the old Eminem, this is what some of them are talking about. This is the dead toddler talking, women raping and killing, mass murdering Shady that people loved from things like the Relapse album and from even the Slim Shady LP way back in the day. So he has a lot of lines talking about those subjects I've talked about. This is one of the songs in which, there's literally a line where he's like, how the fuck did Ivanka Trump get in the trunk of my car? And he, talks about dead toddlers and stuff under the snow and stuff. Lyrically, even though the subject matter is a little bit cringy, I've gotten over all cringe with Eminem, so I'm over it. I like his flow on this track, and the instrumental is just off enough. It sounds like a demented Saturday morning cartoon. It's kind of hard to explain, but I like the instrumental on this one a lot, and it gets me hype. And even though it's very tongue-in-cheek with the offensive humor and stuff in this song, I enjoy Framed overall, and it's definitely one of my more favorite tracks on the album. It's up there with Like Home, probably on the same level there. But yeah, Framed, even though it's kind of cringy if you are not a fan of the more offensive side of Eminem, but as far as his flow and just the song structure overall, it's definitely a highlight for me. Then we have Nowhere Fast featuring Kalani. Now, this song is another similar to Tragic Endings, similar to Like Home. It's another song in which Eminem is rapping over a beat that is largely poppy. But I do like this song a lot because he comes with the lyricism on this track very, very hard. He has a really great extended metaphor where he's talking about nukes and Kim Jong-un. I wish I could quote it for you right now, but that's a really good highlight on the entire album for me. And the beat is kind of fast, so he's like riding a faster beat on here. But like I said, it's a poppy beat, so it's not like, oh man, he's about to murder this beat. Which even at the beginning of the song, he says, I'm about to kill this beat, sympathy for this track, something like that. And it's like, oh man, he's about to go off. But this is not the type of beat that you play and you want to hear someone go off on. He goes off on it, of course, but it's just not, it doesn't lend itself to like, oh man, we're about to go hard with some lyrics. Kalani does a great job singing as well. Let me not even overlook that. But overall, this song, lyrically is one of my highlights, but the instrumental, while not as the instrumental doesn't turn me off as much as something like Remind Me did or something like Bad Husband did, but Nowhere Fast, I just wish he had a beat on here that was more complimentary of his intense and amazing lyricism that he brought on that track. So overall, one of the higher tracks on the album, definitely above the middle of the pack. But you know, that instrumental, I just wish it was a little bit better for me, a little bit more what I wanted. Then we go on to Heat. Heat is another song similar to Remind Me. Gosh, it's heavily rock and roll once again, and he even comes with the lyricism quite a bit more than he did on Remind Me. Remind Me seemed a little bit lazy when it came to the lyrics and the writing, but he definitely has some clever punchlines on here. It's an enjoyable track. It's not something that I itch to turn off so quickly when it comes on. It's not like Remind Me. He does a little bit more actual rapping rather than just, you know, saying things on beat, which is what Remind Me felt like. He's I don't know. Heat and Remind Me are so similar, so it's hard to say what's so different about each of them. He just comes with the lyricism a little bit more, so it's a little bit more tolerable what the song is about. Once again, Heat is just about, you know, oh man, look at these badass women, they're so hot and stuff, and just a bunch of corny lines. And it's like, you know, he has a really clever Asperger's line in Heat that I thought was A1. But other than that, Heat is a track. It's an in-between track, similar to Nowhere Fast right before it. On paper, I should hate this track just because it sounds so much in concept and really in sound to Remind Me, but I don't hate it as much. And then we get on to my absolute favorite track on the album, Offended. Offended is basically Eminem just going off on one of the only beats on this entire album that has a heavy drum, like heavy bass in the beat. And it is definitely my favorite track, not just because of the instrumental, but also he really goes off. Like, at this point in Offended, he's just rapping out whatever he wants to. He makes some clever punchlines about Bill Cosby, says a whole bunch of shit to not only Donald Trump, but also Mitch McConnell and a lot of Donald's, you know, extended family. Just some clever lyricism here. This is like peak Eminem for me. This is where I love him at his most, where he's just riding a beat and it's just killing every single thing. And then at the very end, he does the like Speed'em-esque just zoom as fast as he can on the mic just to end out the song. Offended is a masterpiece of a track as far as I'm concerned. That beat might be a little bit too minimalistic for some, and they don't keep the bass in the track for the entire thing. They do stop it when Eminem feels like he has to say something, or when the chorus is just ended and they are leading back up into the height of a verse. And also the chorus is a little bit awkward. I hesitate to say it's bad because it didn't ruin the entire song for me, but he does like halt the entire instrumental and have an entire different like flow. He basically says like a nursery rhyme as the chorus, but a nursery rhyme doesn't have the same beat as the verses, so he like makes an abrupt cut and then starts, you know, doing this nursery rhyme and then cuts back into the original instrumental and then starts rapping again. It's definitely strange, but it's not a complete track ruiner for me. So like I said, Offended, one of my favorite tracks on the album. No, not one of, my favorite track on this album. And it's a shame that I had to get all the way to track 15 in order to listen to it. Speaking of listening to, I wish I didn't listen to this next track, 16. This is Need Me featuring Pink. First things first, man. Before Pink even opens her mouth, the instrumental on this sounds like some shit from like Rent or like, what is that one? They have just one play where they're playing trash cans and stuff, and that's the music. That's what the beginning of this instrumental sounds like. It is just so like, what the fuck is them thinking with this instrumental? Eventually, the instrumental gets into stride and it starts getting more tolerable. But it's Pink singing for the first 2 minutes of this song. This is Eminem's album, but Pink is singing for the first 2 minutes on a track, and we don't hear Eminem at all. That is just, I don't even know how that got greenlit. That was a big turn off for me. Eventually, M comes in at the end, and when M is finally on the track, it sounds a little bit like Kings Never Die, which is a Gwen Stefani featured track he did for the Southpaw film a couple years ago. And that flow I really enjoyed on that song, so I enjoy the flow on this song as well. Couple punchlines in here, but overall, this track is brought down by the weird instrumental at the beginning. It comes around by the end, but just the start of the instrumental is just really off to me. And then Pink singing for the first part of the track. Pink don't even sound bad. It's just she's on there so long. You're like, where the fuck is M? And you're waiting for him to do a verse. I feel like he only did one verse in this, and Pink just sung the first verse. It's just a strange track in general. So overall, Need Me, not. This is the worst song on the album for me. It's not something I can really. It's not something I have an urge to ever listen to again. I probably will, because I'm going to listen to this album a little bit for the good tracks I like. But, you know, Need Me, just, this isn't what I want from him at all. Just keep that far away. And then we're on to In Your Head, which samples a zombie song from back in the day. This is another more introspective track. Eminem talking about, you know, his personal demons and his problems. And it's a solid track. It's definitely doing. It's not quite doing the type of storytelling you'd see in like the Eminem Show, one of his older albums, but it's inching towards there. It is a track I like. The chorus I kind of feels flat to me. The chorus is literally just sampling, you know, the song that I mentioned from the Zombies. So it's not someone singing over it or anything. It's just playing that part of the song. So it kind of feels like maybe it's just a little bit lower volume or something. It just doesn't match the epicness that the beat is trying to go for. But overall, not too many punchlines from M in this one. This is more him talking about specific things in his life. So I thought that was fine. And then we get on to the last two tracks of the album, which are Castle and A Rose. Now, other reviews have said this as well. These are probably the two objectively best tracks on the album. This is where Eminem is doing a lot of storytelling here, and storytelling in the way that, not like River, where it's about, you know, someone specific. Castle and A Rose are about him specifically. It is about him, his family, his problems, his issues. Castle is more acting like. I actually like the premise of Castle. It's as if he wrote a bunch of letters to his daughter Haley. Wrote a couple of them in the late 90s, early 2000s, and they were basically letters saying, you know, I've tried to, just like things he wants to do in the rap game and how he wants to make it better for his life, his family, his daughter, and all this stuff. And then the last verse is actually him writing a letter from more recent times, back I want to say around the Relapse era, when M was on his drug binge or full swing of it, and was basically saying, you know, I tried to keep your name out of my song, or I've used your name in the songs, but I've never shown your face, so you can still have some type of private life. And just him kind of showing some of the regrets about having his personal life on such a big public stage and just not thinking twice about it. Castle is a really great song, and the ending is very surprising because it ties into the next song, A Rose. So at the end of Castle, he basically not dies, but as most Eminem fans know, Eminem overdosed on pills one night and got dragged into the hospital. And if they waited, you know, even 2 hours later, he would have died right there on that, I want to say, hotel room floor. And so Castle, at the end of it, he basically, you know, goes unconscious in that hotel room. And A Rose is basically on his deathbed saying, I'm sorry for all of the things he's done, and making his peace with a whole bunch of people. And it's just listing off, you know, all names of family members and like saying, I'm sorry, proof I tried, and all this stuff. And I also like the beat on A Rose because it samples, it's a song, I don't know the name of the song, but I know how it goes. It's the one, you've probably seen it in a certain Family Guy episode where they sung the entire song, but it goes out, some say love, it is a river that'll soak, and I forget the rest of the words. It samples that, and it's a very, like, it's not the type of song I'd expect to have a fire instrumental if you sampled it, but it works perfectly here, and it definitely has that feeling of like walking to the light of heaven at the end of your life. This song is a masterpiece. Apologizing to his daughters, apologizing to Kim. He even says a thank you to his dad because with him not being there, his dad taught him what not to do. And he doesn't even harp on it too much because Eminem likes to be like, "Oh fuck you, dad, I hate you." He just says that and then moves on with it. He shows some restraint in that fact, which I thought was pretty impressive on his part. And A Rose actually ends with, after he said all this stuff on his deathbed to all his family and stuff, he starts talking about how the machines are cutting back on and it starts beating again. And then he talks about how I'm gonna rewind this mistake, and then the track reverts to the beat that was used on Castle in the track before it, and then the last few lines of Castle are rewritten to say, because at the end of Castle he says something along the lines of, and if I'm to fail, then consider this my my last song or my apology or whatever. That line is removed, and then the lines at the end of A Rose are re-said, and it says something along the lines of, and if I am to fail, but I probably won't, I'm gonna come back on them. I'm gonna make a second Marshall Mathers LP. I'm gonna make that Recovery. It basically comes back twice as strong, and is basically saying, I'm gonna flush these pills down the toilet, and I'm gonna come back and make y'all proud. And that is what he goes on to do, of course, as we know, because we're in that timeline. But yeah, that's how the song ends. And then the song ends with the audio of him flushing the pills down the toilet after he wakes up and everything. So really, really outstanding track there at the end, though I didn't upon first listen, the sound effect of him flushing the pills down the toilet threw me off because I didn't really understand the concept of the last two tracks yet, so I was just thrown off by what was going on. But definitely those two tracks are the strongest tracks on the album. So yeah, overall, that is Revival. What do I think of this album? You see, now this is where we get into this is where I'm gonna get into trouble, maybe, I don't know. My problem with this album is that, see, this is what my theory was before I've even seen interviews and stuff from Eminem. It seems like this album is trying to hit on all of people's favorite aspects of Eminem. You have his more classic pop tracks. You have him bearing his soul on a lot of these tracks. You have his heavy rock and roll stuff that, the types who listen to Kid Rock would enjoy. You have his very enthusiastic, almost patriotic, or definitely patriotic in the case of Like Home. You have his ballads that are really uplifting and epic. You have him doing sillier songs about really fucked up, awful shit, like in Framed. Basically, going throughout his whole discography, you have a different type of Eminem for everything. Even Believe, which is the one produced by him, gives me hints of Lose Yourself. Just a little bit, not heavily. So this whole track list is kind of just giving you a smorgasbord of all of the aspects of Eminem and all the different types of rapping styles, song creation styles that he's had throughout his whole career. The problem with this is that this makes for a really, really, really inconsistent album. Like I said, there are tracks on here that I enjoy, but most of the time they're sandwiched by tracks that I either can't stand or just leave a bad taste in my mouth. There's just so much inconsistency on here. And even though the rapping is great almost throughout, except for in the case of Remind Me, the rapping might be great throughout, but the instrumental selection is just so all over the place that I just can't get with it. This really upsets me, man, because I was over here thinking, especially with that, because if you consider the album promo for this album, starting with the Trump freestyle from the BET Hip Hop Awards, I thought that was the first beck and call of Eminem coming out with something that was gonna take people by surprise and was gonna grab people's attention. And I thought this is gonna be a new leaf for Eminem. And then when Walk on Water came out, where he's acknowledging all of the flaws he has and all the criticisms he gets, I thought that was another hint towards an Eminem that knew his problems and was gonna work to fix them. Not even work to fix them specifically, but just work to do things that he's never done before, so he could shut those haters up. I thought he was gonna, I don't know what I thought he was gonna do, I just did not expect him to come with an album that somewhat feels lazy. It just feels lazy because these are all things that he's done before. All of these tracks are different things, but they're all different things that he has done before. And it's just really disappointing. I, for one, I if I didn't have the expectations that I did, I would love this album a whole lot more than I do. I'm still going to listen to it quite a bit more because I am an Eminem fan and I do like a good bit of these tracks, so I'm gonna listen to it. But it's just my expectations were in a completely different place than where this album ended up being, and I don't know, man. It just sent me thinking with Eminem just in general. Like, if you look at all these features, the two stronger tracks that he has on this album, or not two, let me cancel out the two. The stronger tracks he has on this album, Beyonce's Walk on Water, I enjoy that track even though I've had those criticisms. Like Home, I already said, is one of my favorite tracks on here. Offended, one of my favorite tracks on here. Those tracks either have black features or have a beat structure that takes a little bit more from black specific music. I feel like if Eminem would just work with us a little bit more, work with us black folk a little bit more, we can show you what a good song sounds like, or at least a song that won't get you so trashed on by your hip-hop fans. I feel like he doesn't do that for whatever reason. The last time he worked with Dre was for the Compton album that was released in promotion with Straight Outta Compton. So, like, it's just really disheartening. And I was wondering, did he create this album just for a money grab? Or not even a money grab, but is it just one of those things where, he's signed to a record label, they need a new album, they need some new sales, Eminem's a guaranteed hit. Is he just putting out an album to say he has put out an album? But no, this album was made with intention. He's gone into interviews and said, people always say they want the old Eminem, but then when I do old Eminem, they always say I'm too old to talk about this, so when I go mature myself and talk about mature things, they want the old Eminem. He sees that inherent contradiction on the internet and the back and forth about it. He has tried to deliver a track list and an album that pleases everyone, and in trying to please everyone, he ends up he's gonna please people, but it feels like he's pleasing no one. At least it didn't please me as much as I wanted. I sincerely hope people who have listened to the album and do enjoy it, keep enjoying it. I really don't want to take that away from you, the enjoyment of the album. But as for me, I was expecting quite a bit more. And the silver lining on all this, last time an Eminem album got panned like this, like it is getting panned by critics right now, that was Relapse. And because Relapse was so bad, we got Recovery the very next year. So cross your fingers. Maybe this will lead into another new Eminem project soon. Maybe with a little bit more, maybe with some of the more reactionary vibes like I expected. Maybe he can finally deliver us another classic like I know he has it in him. He is not washed up. I just can't accept this album as something that I'm going to listen to on repeat for months. I'll pick and choose a couple tracks, but overall, I'm cold on Revival. So that's it for me. I've said well more than I needed to say on this album. But you guys know me. Eminem's one of my favorite rappers of all time. He was my favorite rapper for the longest time until Kendrick recently took that spot. Not so recently, but took that spot. So I'm hoping Eminem can come back and, bring something we can be proud of. Because right now I'm in a deflated state. But yeah, I look forward to his next release. I look forward to the next video. And y'all keep it real and keep it trill. Adios. This cannot continue.